As we get older, we're supposed to get wiser. Some do, and sometimes we still do things that are unwise. But you would think that human race, humanity itself, as it progressed through the ages, would get wiser as a whole, basic system. But it does not. It doesn't seem to have learned anything from the days of Rome, and maybe beyond that. Because it's in the field of, excuse me, the idea of what is secure a home, what is the value of a home, is that, in my opinion, humble opinion, humanity lacks judgment and lacks values and lacks wisdom. Recently, as we know, they're going in Australia and America, wherever, they're going to raise the interest rates because they say the inflation is higher. The inflation that is higher is created by lowering interest rates, inducing people in inflating the value or the price of a house, reducing the value of wages, therefore. So therefore, there's less money going into the economy, and that's a negative inflation. That's negative inflation. And because then there's less money going into the economy and there's more and more debt for these houses, you have to have another stimulus. The cycle of stimulus since Greenspan was there, it's caused a massive amount of debt, unprecedented debt in America, which is supposed to be the richest economy in the world, now struggles to pay its debt. And therefore, it says it's got to raise the interest rates to control inflation. And all that does, it controls the amount of money the people can spend into the economy. You can't help the economy by putting a squeeze on everyone's rents and mortgages. So, this is the thing that politicians over the last 40 years have ignored, is that their primary duty for the security of society and protect society will be to put a greater value on the home as an investment in the security for the family, and add some sort of scale in that, have some sort of equation or formula what allows that to be controlled, and therefore the rest of the inflationary cycle is controlled, and therefore you have less debt. Because the greatest investment in a house is an investment in security for the family over the duration of that family or in generations. It's not, because the system is a landlord system and a banker landlord financier system, rather than a system what is for society to have a home and live happily ever after sort of thing within its home, as long as its family stays together, etc., etc. But because you've got this negative inflationary cycle that's almost perpetual, society is now extremely insecure. It doesn't know its future, it's a future's uncertainty. And yes, there will be a reset, regardless of, because the reset was going to occur right at the very beginning when Greenspan started stimulating the economy. So therefore, the people who get the most advantage of that are the ones who get to handle the finance first, and it benefits them most. So therefore, they are more into inflating the price of real estate and assets. Asset value prices have inflated ever since. But has the values of life improved? How do you improve the values of life when you've taken away the ability to sustain a roof over your head by course always inflating the prices of mortgages and reducing the value of wages? It's a very, very, in other words, there is no economic model. And you've got banks, it's a banker's model, it's not an economic model, and it's certainly not a democratic model. People say, we vote for this, we vote for that. And politicians argue from both sides about whatever, but they're always influenced by people behind them. So their arguments in parliaments or senates, wherever it is, it's sort of then clouded by who's influencing them behind them. Therefore, they can't speak truly impartially and objectively in regards to the security of society, whether you're left and right. And it doesn't mean that everyone should work. I totally, utterly believe very strongly that there should be no unemployment. There should be no unemployment. It shouldn't be thousands and millions of people sitting on the streets in America or anywhere with nothing to do. They're a danger to themselves and danger to society. They should all be working, but because of the amount of money taken out of the system by the negative inflationary cycle, the system it is, that means there's less money to go in to employing people in subsidiary employments. I'm going to call it a sustainable social organic economics, which should be a parallel model to just a political corporate model. And that's what's missing in the politics, there's no sustainable social organic economic model that they can argue about in these parliaments that then organises it or allows it so that more and more people are employed in an organic way, rather than just in the machine of the corporate machine system, which it seems to be all going towards. So it's all right having a left and right. That seems to me no longer relevant anymore, because neither solve the problem of all the people struggling to pay their mortgages or rents and end up on the street for whatever reason, many of it's their own fault for their own behaviour. But there's a lot of people going on there because they can't get work. There's no work. Because there's a limited amount of work, because there's a limited amount of finance to employ people, because all the finance is going towards now higher interest rates, when there's a shortage of fiscality within the system, caused by this negative inflationary cycle that seems to be perpetual, and no one seems to know what to do about it. We have people like Klaus Schwab saying there's going to be a great reset, but what's he doing interfering in American politics? I have no idea how American politicians allow a person living in another country, a foreigner, to interfere in their domestic affairs in any way at all. If he is doing, then that's a failure on their part to protect the people from foreign interests in their country. That is a failure in a way. If you can't protect your own people from foreign influences that are negative to the benefit of the society as a whole, forget they're just people, negative to the benefit of America or Australia or any country as a whole country, is a whole, it's an organism, it ought to be an organism. It has different opinions, different cultures, different values amongst them. But basically there should be some sort of value what guides politics of both sides in regards to housing security for everyone. Because if all you're doing is inflating the cost of it perpetually, so we come to this very, very strange situation where people just, the price of houses are ridiculous for what it costs to build them. And I know, I was in the building game for a long time, and we know in how much it costs to build a house has nothing to do with the cost of buying one. In other words, the real value of a house, of a home, is the security for a family. That's now eroded, irrelevant apparently to all the people in governments on both sides who are arguing about all sorts of things other than the most important thing of all, securing that roof over people's heads while they bring up a family. And there's a very broad argument about the causes of debts, getting people trapped into debt for education and things like that, which it's one way of looking at the capitalist system. Yes, people must try hard, they must work hard, etc., to pay that debt, and it encourages people. But a better capitalist system, more equitable one, talk about equality, will be where people gain education, free education, because higher education should be, to a much extent, should be commonly a free thing, but it should be based on effort in school by passing an exam to go to the higher education. And that's my opinion. And I hope I'm entitled to that opinion. It's not meant to offend anyone. It's meant to say education is the most important thing you can have in a society. And the more you encourage people to try hard to get into education rather than buy the way into education, surely you improve the standards. Surely people then become more able in themselves to get on in life and understand the values of life differently by putting the work in to become educated, rather than just going to universities because you can afford to do that. Because that is the beginning of this negative inflationary cycle. And it's a very, very bad model of capitalism, where it's just a usury system, where you use the idea of debt to inflate the price of everything and lower the values of life itself. So that's only my humble opinion about what is the value of a house. Its value of a house is nothing if you can't afford to live in it anymore because you're out of work, because the economy is collapsing, because of whatever reasons, or your wages just don't cover your mortgages. You've got no money over. You're using credit cards all the time to pay for your grocery bills, etc., because you don't understand how to budget yourself and control your own spending according to your income. Because nothing is perpetual. And when you've got negative inflationary cycles, that happens throughout history, you get collapses of society and collapses of civilization.